So I just want to apologize. I'm a bit under the weather today, but if you guys can't hear me or you need anything, let me know and I'll try my best to. So I think we'll get started now. So hello, everyone. I'll just put in all the links again so that we have them. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate that you're present and that you gave up your time to be here. It's something that's very valuable, so thank you. So this workshop is focusing on food systems and the creation of sustainable food systems for our communities and within our schools. And it's so necessary that while we engage in food studies and we reflect on sustainable practices that we recognize and respect, but also consult Indigenous peoples throughout all the steps as they're traditional stewards of the lands that we are situated on. Today, I'm coming from Richmond Hill, Ontario, so I'll be saying a land acknowledgement that pertains to Richmond Hill. But as I do this, try to recognize the traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories that you are placed on today. So I would like to acknowledge that Richmond Hill is situated on lands covered by Treaty 13, the Williams Treaties. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe nations, and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. Today, Richmond Hill is still the home to many Indigenous people from all across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have this opportunity to work on the land. So I'm going to direct us to the Jamboard link, and what we're going to do for this activity is we're going to look at how are you connected to food in your community, and are you connected to food? Do you feel this connection to food in your community? And if you feel comfortable, you could share whether it be in the chat or on the Jamboard. For me personally, I'm from Richmond Hill, and this will amplify my privilege as a white middle-class woman that until my undergrad degree in environmental science and sustainable studies, I never really felt really connected to food in my community until I started to learn about it. So again, that amplifies my privilege. But when I think about it, how can I learn about sustainability and sustainable studies without thinking of how am I connected to food in my community as this relates to a linear economy or circular economy? So however you feel putting it in, you can use the pen function, because sometimes at times I feel like I'm connected, but sometimes I don't. So yeah, gardens near our house, that was something that I always resonated with. Awesome. Good food boxes. Growing our own food, that's fantastic. Maybe we'll give it a couple more seconds or minute. Yeah, some days I feel like, especially I guess it's seasonality too. Some seasons I feel like I'm very connected to food in my community, and then at other times I don't. Local food boxes in winter months, that's awesome. Yeah, it's hard to afford local food. Buying local, fantastic. Yeah, no, there's always like, for me too, and I bet others feel this way, like you're in the middle sometimes. You feel so connected and you want to get more connected, but then there's so many other aspects to it. The social aspect of getting food, balancing your time, like just financial too. So supporting restaurants, yeah, that's fantastic. So I'm just going to go back to our slideshow. And those were awesome points, something that we can reflect on. Thank you guys. So for this workshop, my expectations and objectives for myself and of all of us is that we briefly learn about household food insecurity. We learn about food initiatives, learn how they fit into education, receive some beginner resources, because I myself, I'm too just a beginner and immersing myself into sustainable food practices, and have the resources to begin thinking about implementing them into our schools. So if we want to go back to the Jamboard, we can, but if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat or out loud, your definition of food insecurity, because it's a broad definition. Oh, sorry. I'll just hop on this one. Oops. So if you want to place your thoughts on what food insecurity is, you can do so if you feel comfortable. If not, totally understandable. Yeah, not having a reliable source of food or income to provide food. Limited choices in menus. That's something that sometimes when I first thought of food insecurity and food security, I just thought it wasn't like having any food, but it's also the choice of food and having the ability to choose. So a frequent definition that is used to define food insecurity is, and food security is from the 1996 World Food Summit. And it discusses on all these, the lack of ability, no time to meal prep. Yep. Yep. No, these are all so awesome. Food deserts, that's for sure something. And we'll go into all the different categories and what makes up food insecurity and food security. Awesome. Yeah, I think that when you're experiencing food deserts and food insecurity, there's also you're facing the social determinants of health, and that could be mental health, such as eating disorders. So that's something that I never really considered. So thank you to whoever put that in. So when we're looking at food insecurity, one definition that's predominantly used is from the 1996 World Food Summit, which states that food security at the individual, household, national, regional, and global levels is achieved when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So as we saw with all the fantastic points that we were putting in the Jamboard, that it's a very complex and ever-changing and evolving term. And it's something that post-World War I era, it focused mostly on countries and communities. But now there's more of the household food security lens when we're discussing the distribution and accessibility to food. So when we're examining food security, and a lot of us mentioned this, that there's the 3 domains of it, that food's physically available, that there's access to food, that we can physically access this food. It's economically accessible. Food is safe for consumption. So this goes into the environmental health part. It's culturally acceptable. And the utilization, that it's a nutritional quality of food. So for me versus someone else, this could be very different. So it's not just one definition that we can put on everyone. And let's just say someone is new to Canada and they can physically have their food there. It's at the grocery store, it's physically available. They can physically access this food. They have the funds to get this food. It's safe for consumption. There's no contaminants in it, but there's a culturally acceptable part. So when we're looking at food projects, especially with children and food, we have to also think about the social and cultural components of food before we truly implement any food projects. And again, we saw this during COVID-19, that food security can vary due to seasonal changes, regional variations, and we're seeing this more and more with climate change and just extreme weather events, events in our lives, death in family, and more. So if anyone feels comfortable, maybe out loud, or they want to put in the chat, what were some food initiative projects or food projects that you saw at your placement schools, and how are they promoted? If anyone, if not, like put in the chat, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Yeah, Bethany?
Hi, Christina. I just thought I would share about like our school. I was placed in Collingwood, and our school was a French immersion, so it had a variety of classes, a variety of social economic makeups and families. So there were several, students that were coming from more residential, suburban, well-off, as I get, most teachers would call it, in that community. And then there was a pocket of families that were really struggling in a poor and area of where the school was located and struggling. So the principals and a few volunteers would go out and buy groceries.
Oh, wow.
And then on days, they would bag those groceries. So just getting, basic staples, but also fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, and then they would deliver them. So it was often the principal or vice principal hand delivering these groceries. And sometimes, especially because we were nearing the holidays, they were looking at gift card options as
Oh,
well.
wow.
So,
I've never seen that in a school in my experience. So that's like a fantastic program. Because
yeah,
yeah, no, like a lot of even like in the comments that I'm seeing here, like breakfast programs, there are a lot of breakfast, snack boxes, and then you see something like that. It's a big change. But yeah, that was how was it promoted, or was it mostly like just the principals doing it, if you don't mind sharing?
yeah, I don't know too much. I honestly don't know too much. I know there was 2 students in the grade 3 class I was in that were receiving that. And that's just because the teacher I was placed with kind of shared that with me. But I don't know if it's maybe as the teacher gets to know students and maybe develops that relationship with families, if they can provide, like I'm kind of assuming maybe that's one way, is
No,
if
for sure.
seeing the need firsthand, like there's not enough food coming in for lunch, they can make suggestions to the principal, but that's just kind of my assumption on
No,
what.
and like that amplifies like the need when we're talking about food and food system, like building that relationship first. So no, thank you so much for sharing that. That was something. AJ?
Yeah, I had a kind of a cool example in one of my experiences as well. One of the schools I was at, the principal was very much involved in this kind of stuff. Like it was kind of their personal passion. So that school actually ran a breakfast with Santa every year in the winter. And luckily I was able to volunteer with this, so I learned a lot about it. So what it was is they would organize to have all this food and people cooking the food and all this stuff on a certain day. I think it was like a Saturday morning, but it wasn't restricted to the students in the school. Anybody in the community could walk in and have breakfast. So it was kind of like it was kind of nice because it was a way to connect to the community, and you didn't
Yeah.
like, even if you didn't have a kid, like let's say you were just maybe like an elderly couple down the street, they could walk in and have breakfast as well. So it kind of like, showed everyone in the community that this is like a safe space in a way. So I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of like a cool initiative that I saw.
No, that's awesome. And like that even relates to the whole community food initiative. It's kind of dignifying how we get food and building a community. April?
So at the school that I was at, they had the baskets of food, and then they had a group of children that would get lunch daily. So prior to the school day starting, for those kids, I'd be making their lunch and putting it in their desks while I was there on my placement. But one thing they did was they advocated for the good food box, and the principal and vice principal for some of the families paid for the good food box to be delivered to their house. And then other families were able to purchase it for themselves. The other thing they did was, because they did have hot lunch days, when you signed up for hot lunch, there was a question that stated if your child was away on the day of hot lunch, if you were willing to donate that hot lunch to another child in the school, or if you were willing to donate a hot lunch. So you were able to add $375 or $475 to your child's bill, and in exchange it would provide an extra hot lunch that day, and then they would distribute it to children in the school that typically didn't have lunch.
That's fantastic. Because again, like when you have those types of programs, it's also just like dignifying food. And it's not like, let me pull this student out of class and give them this, but it is that like allowing for the choice and almost like giving of that food. So that's awesome. And I saw, yeah, Caitlin said that it gives, it's a good initiative, breakfast programs, not necessarily needing it, just the ability to take it. So that's fantastic. April, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, I was just going to say the great thing about it was that it wasn't like the students didn't know who was getting it because their parent had or guardian had ordered it, and who was getting it because it was donated. So it was just that it came and then they were handed out. And so I really like that it took the stigma away that, so-and-so's getting it because someone else is sick today. It just came like everybody else's meal, and nobody in the class really knew why or how, or it was ordered, right?
Exactly. No, and those experiences are fantastic. And I bet that there's so many schools out there that have those wonderful experiences. And in my placement, I found that there was a breakfast program, but it wasn't necessarily promoted, and I had to really dig into it to understand. So that's what made me get into thinking about community food initiatives. How can we make sure that food is grounded in our local communities and it's dignifying it, and there's no stigma to accessing these programs, because at some point in our lives, I think that almost everyone experiences some food insecurity. Yeah, and making sure that the student's always covered, and it's, yeah. So I'm just gonna move into that, but thank you guys, like this discussion is fantastic, and I hope near the end we can talk more about experiences. So community food initiatives are programs that, as said, they're grounded in the local community, and they provide alternatives to the dominant food system, which are grocery chains, or even the charitable and assisted programs like a food bank or soup kitchens. And they might include the collective kitchen. So we saw that in one of the examples, that you were cooking beforehand, or people can go in and cook. Gleaning programs, so connection with local farmers or gardens. Food knowledge programs in central locations and community locations. Good food boxes, one awesome example. Food literacy programs. And for me, I'm going to focus more so on community gardens and school gardens in the school, because it has the ability to branch into the good food box, the gleaning program, using of a collective kitchen with those resources. So they're intrinsically necessary for developing sustainable schools as they move away from an individual and human-centered sustainability model towards a community model. So before I hop into the benefits of them, because we've seen so many in our own examples that they're great for students and they provide choice and access, research does show though that it does not, it's not a solution in ending household food insecurity, because that's deeply rooted in income insecurity. So if we want to make a large change, then it comes more from like livable wages and making sure that precarious work, that there's no precarious work, or that everyone has this livable wage, that they can afford the basic necessities. But when we're examining community food initiatives in educational settings, we're focusing on how it can change how individuals interact with food and their community. So that being said, there's a lot of non-monetary benefits, such as the connection through food and empowerment of themselves. And we saw this in many of our examples. The destigmatizing of food accessibility programs and dignifying the ways in which groups get their food. One study showed that individuals that were participants in a collective kitchen found that it was beneficial to them because of food variety, quality, increased dignity, and less stress compared to attending a soup kitchen or meals that were provided to them. As well, community gardens can reframe the food system completely from us viewing ourselves as consumers to actually being citizens in our community, as it fosters civic engagement and a new sense of community and collective. And there's also increasing social and physical health benefits when you're growing your own food. So one particular study that really resonated with me while I was going through these case studies was one that was based in Peterborough, Ontario, that focused on low-income mothers and their access to community food initiatives. And it found that these mothers, they felt that they had an increased choice, which changed how they viewed themselves as mothers, rather than always going to the food bank or bringing their children to soup kitchens. And when we look at community food initiatives, we focus on how it's so intersectional with race, gender, sex, and class and social norms of being a mother and feeding your own children. Is there any questions or any comments before maybe we move on? So how does this fit into education? So I looked at some case studies as mentioned, and there's one that, and of course, there's health benefits to these gardens, as when you're interacting with your environment and you're having these positive environmental interactions, it's increasing your environmental behavior. So all resulting in, for the most part, very sustainable citizens. So when we're looking at how it fits into education, notable models of successful community gardens are always in Detroit. There's so many fantastic studies out there on Detroit community gardens. So in Southwest Detroit, a community garden was developed in a low-income community, and it was with a community partnership with community organizations and universities. And in this program, the children were taught to grow their own food, and the study was based on the perspective of the children. And they found that the children gained more knowledge about the identification of fruits and vegetables, and that their description of a healthy diet switched to being, oh, it's just eating good, to the actual nutritional benefits of a fruit and a vegetable, like the vitamins benefits. As well, children enjoyed the physical labor of gardening and continued to play outside following these gardening sessions. Mothers began to bring their own children there because they felt that it was a safe environment for socializing. Children felt proud of their environment, and they also began making more friends, and they felt safer during the daytime hours. And a study close to home, which was based in Ontario, in Toronto, found that at one elementary school where there was a lot of behavioral issues, and also 85% of the students there were English language learners, one grade 1 teacher expressed this: I think for me, it was just that the children were always engaged when they're out there, and the behavior management piece falls away. So the thing I always notice, this especially with kids who have a hard time being in the classroom and being still, is that you get them in the garden and everyone's calm. They're listening and they're more focused. So that piece, it's just great for me to see the engagement. So you can see that there's so many benefits for how a child perceives the school-based garden and also the teacher. So these are just 2 case studies that resonated with me. Do we have enough time to watch a short video? It's about 4 minutes. Awesome. So this is based in America. So when we're looking at it, we also have to think of our own selves and even like weather, which we'll touch on later. But it was a pretty awesome video. You get to see the kids' perspectives as well as the educator. Volume.
I think it's vitally important to teach kids about where their food comes from. Anybody, even adults. I think that our disconnect from that is such a big part of why there's so many health problems in this country and in the world. Because if you really don't have a connection to where your food's coming from, you really don't even understand what it means, for a plant to grow and to produce food. We've become very accustomed to a certain way of life, and I think that the more kids that are actually having gardens and planting their own seeds and learning and watching something grow, the more that they'll become sensitive and conscious human beings, and really thinking about how their actions and their nurturing can affect something.
We'll both get it. All I have to do is just get into this one. We got the monster carrot, dude. Oh my god, that is a monster carrot. Pull it out. Whoa! Oh, wow. Oops. That's a big carrot. Does that end look durable?
A significant amount of the hard labor here is done by the kids. They love to move mulch and compost. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready? Your lunch scraps.
Oh, yummy. Yummy, give me some.
Let's bury it so it stops smelling. Cover it up with dirt, otherwise it's gonna stink.
My name's Nate, and we're burying up some stuff in that hole, and it really smells. And there's lots of loose dirt there, and a while ago we were picking some carrots, and they really taste good.
We're gonna plant an alpine strawberry bed on top of that thing, at least for now. Later on we'll do something else. Most of the beds in the garden have had that procedure done to them. We just amend the soil on the top a little bit and then plant on the same bed.
There's been a lot of studies done about the nutritional superiority of a food that's, let's say, an apple that's just been picked versus an apple that's been shipped, 250 miles or thousands of miles just to be eaten. And as soon as it's picked, it starts losing its potency. And if anyone is fortunate enough to pick, a piece of fruit from a tree and eat it. I mean, that is, to me, is like one of the greatest things in life.
Okay, you know what, guys? I think we have enough for the rest of the year.
No, we
Yeah.
must have more.
No,
Like this one.
break out the greens, put them in the bucket. God, look at all these carrots.
You like it?
Getting students that have never liked or even tasted a pea or don't like carrots, beans. They, I encourage them to take just a little bite of that snap pea, and they take the bite. Oh, this is really good. And almost to a student, they are converts and they're just looking for the peas. Bill, are there any peas?
Kids connecting to plants is a way for them to feel, in some ways too, feel like they have a place in the world, that they are actually able to grow their own food. And it's kind of maybe this is the wrong word, but it's kind of an empowering thing to be a nurturer, to, nurture a plant, watch it grow. It does give some kids a sense of self-esteem that they didn't have before. And those benefits are just, they just keep extending far and wide.
So that was just one idea. Yeah, for sure. I can share the video link. Oh, sorry. It's okay. I'll share it after the presentation. Is that okay? Awesome. So, and I think I shared these slides with everyone as well, if you want to grab them. So, and of course, this fits into Ontario. That was a different, totally different weather-wise and whatnot, but it fits into the education, acting today and shaping tomorrow, as it's recommended that schools and educators work with community organizations and networks to enhance community engagement, student engagement, and the involvement within the natural world. So I didn't want to just do this presentation, so I wanted to give everyone a toolbox kit, which I can make sure I put the link in now too as well. So it doesn't have every single region in all of Ontario. It would have taken much too long, but if you have anything that you would like to add into this, it connects us with community food initiatives and gardening programs and good food boxes. So the first, I guess, valuable resource is Ontario Edible Education Network, which is developed to share information, coordinate, advocate for individuals and groups in helping students learn about good food practices and build healthy food environments all across Ontario. And it has priority in supporting teachers to know opportunities that are there to interact and learn about school and student food projects. And there's also a lot of documents that you can refer to. There's more resources such as Imagine a Garden in Every School. Here, let me see if I can, everyone just, sorry. Different regions. I didn't get to Guelph and that area, which is somewhere that I'd like to explore because the University of Guelph has fantastic agriculture program, which is something that I wanted to amplify, that as educators, connect with your local post-secondary institution. Universities and colleges have so many amazing programs like community-based resource projects, education students like ourselves. Yeah, that was the one thing about that video that I saw what she said. It kind of made me think about that. When she was saying that, that was just one thing that I saw, her perspective of it. I was a bit iffy on that. So if anyone wants to comment on that as well. Caitlin?
Yeah, Christine, I made a comment just above. You wouldn't have seen because it's definitely hard to present alone and monitor the chat. But yeah, it's interesting because we do place, there's another hierarchy of food, which is freshness of food. And we definitely take advantage of our food systems by like, there's so much food waste. And then we also look at old food as like inedible, which then makes it's,
yeah,
it's so
that was one, I saw that too in the video and I was like, I don't know. Like it's a good point. That's one thing that I really like even the entry point of speaking about it. Sorry, April.
Sorry, that's an old hand.
Oh, no, don't worry. But yeah, that's something too. And it's something I think that's also intersectional then, like you said, like class and like affordability of fresh foods and all the talk about organic and all that fun stuff. But
And like the access to fresh, or like if you look at peas, like they're offered fresh, crazy expensive, frozen, next expensive, and then canned is the least expensive. And we rank those and who buys what based on
exactly.
that product alone.
No, thank you. That's something, thank you for that, because it's something to reconsider too in showing these, and that's definitely something. Thanks, guys. And then just one, and of course, barriers and closing thoughts. That's one of them, is the barrier of thinking like, is fresh food better than frozen food, which we know that it's not, and we can't trust every single thing that's shown to us. There's a financial barrier. So in that slideshow, there is a bunch of grants that are within Ontario that you and your school can apply for if you are looking at community gardens or other food projects. The social consideration, so consult community organizations, build relationships with the population, connect with friendship centers, connect with different types of social groups that are within that community, as they have a bunch of knowledge that they are willing to share. And these partnerships are what make these gardens, and as we know, all other community projects grow and be stronger, and they have a good foundation. So of course, viewing how social groups interact with food differently and what food means to them. There's the barrier of prior knowledge and teachers and administrators. There's also, I guess, the barrier of misconstrued knowledge that we have about fresh food and about food in general and food waste. So making sure that you're looking into that. And I tried to put as many resources as I could in that toolkit that talk about those misconceptions and also provide us as educators with some resources. Of course, there's using and developing these gardens, which can be a bit difficult. So in that toolkit, there's some videos below that show ways that you can, different ways of having a community garden in your school. And then the seasonal barriers. We live in Ontario right now, it's cold. So learning about different plants that can grow in certain conditions. And I think even the seasonal barrier of the summer, it's always good to connect, I think, with post-secondary institutions, as you'll have students that are willing to help out and teach you and even maintain the garden for you if they're doing research there over the summer. Barriers, closing thoughts, if you guys have any other ones that you would like to share or anything that you would like to point out. Yeah, extreme weather and climate change, that's definitely one too. I can't even imagine in the summer you come back and your garden at the school is maybe wrecked because of weather or even just neighborhood issues. So there's so many things that we have to consider before implementing these programs in. And it's not an end-all solution, but it's definitely some small step that we can take to creating more sustainable and environmentally conscious students. Is there any comments or questions? Yeah, Caitlin?
No comment or question. I love this topic. So thank you so much for doing the introduction, and those resources absolutely amazing. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
No, I know everyone in this program comes from so many different backgrounds. So it's just so great to like learn from everyone, because like I'm not whatsoever an expert at this topic, but it's just something that you can keep learning from, and it's changing all the time. So thank you guys for sharing your experiences and being very open.
I have a couple comments, but I just want to see if anyone else had any questions or anything first. No. All right. So yes, I love this presentation too. I love this topic. So it's good you got me to mark your thing because I love this topic. So one thing you did mention, and your presentation didn't mention it, but I wanted to just highlight again, is that when young students garden, they also love eating vegetables more, which is like a huge thing, because if they want or have a desire to eat something that's grown fresh, then they will seek out like ways to do it. Right. So like, I think just the like building like that love of even like eating. So there's a lot of studies actually that came out that said if someone grows something, they're more likely to want to eat it. like regardless of what it is. So I just think like that's like a really cool thing. And I'm hoping you're all going to be in person next year, because in your enviro class, you actually get to do community gardening together.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
like, I thought it was a lot of fun, because there was a lot of people in my class when I did it that were kind of like, oh, I don't want to get my hands dirty. But then they were the ones that were like knee deep in it once we were there, right? So, and another like really cool thing that I wanted to share was like, I'm not very religious, but like my family, you can call them like Sikh, like their religion is Sikh. And at our like temple, which is called the Gurdwara, what we have is like constant volunteers making food. So the way that like my like religious place works is that like every time people go there, they bring in like flour or rice or whatever, and they just donate it there. And then there's always going to be like volunteers there that are making the food. So it's actually like a community initiative within its own community. And it's like really cool because like, sorry to just take over this thing, but like this religion is only 600 years old. So they're not very much like, anyone can walk into a Gurdwara without anyone looking at them or wondering anything. So it's actually like a really interesting thing that like a lot of people who have food insecurity that live in an area where there's a Gurdwara, they will access the Gurdwara with no questions asked. Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I guess the whole point of this is that like if a culture wants to adopt like a community food initiative, like they can. It's just about like kind of our mentality in whether we want to do it or not.
For sure. No, and like I'm thinking right now back what I was saying. I feel like I should have, it's something to be more culturally aware of. I mentioned churches, but then as you said, Sikh, it's like one of those religions where you can look and you know that that person is there to help you. That's like from what I learned. But of course, like I need to open myself up more and note that there's more community organizations that are likely more willing than some churches to help out when it comes to community gardens, community food initiatives, and food security. So thank you for that. I'm going to put that into my toolkit as well.
Awesome.
No, but that's a great example. I know it's only your example, but I feel like it's not talked about. It's not mentioned as much as maybe like Eurocentric religion.
Awesome.
Anything else? Thank you guys. I learned a lot from everyone.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. That presentation was amazing. So many resources that we can actually use, and so many like connections to like school, which is kind of like the most important thing here. Like I know this course can definitely get away from school so easily. Like, but no, I loved it. Just submit your slideshow and your write-up by Monday.
Perfect.
And yeah, everything here was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.